Picture dedicating months to crafting your ideal home, only to have the neighborhood's HOA president tear through it daily with her SUV. One man stayed calm, tried to keep the peace, until he finally hit back in a way no one expected. The noise cut through like a firecracker, a loud pop shattered the morning stillness, followed by the screech of metal and the whistle of air escaping a tire. Neighbors looked up from their breakfast tables, curtains flicked open, and garage doors rolled up. There, on a newly sodded lawn, a silver SUV sat lopsided, its front tire mangled in the grass. Behind the wheel, Colleen Stratton, the HOA president, clutched the steering wheel, her eyes flicking from her car to the staring neighbors, then to the men on his porch across the street. That man was Bryson Hale, the neighbor she'd been driving over for months. He didn't yell or rush out, he just stood there, arms crossed, watching. That's when the neighborhood saw it, the friction between these two had finally erupted. But this wasn't just about a blown tire, it was about respect, control, and what happens when two stubborn souls refuse to yield. To grasp how it came to this, we need to backtrack a bit. When Bryson and his family moved into the Charlotte suburb, it felt like a new chapter. At 44, an IT consultant working from home, Bryson was thrilled to own a house with a yard big enough for his two kids to play in. He spent summer weekends under the scorching Carolina sun, laying sod, shaping flower beds, and tending to each patch of grass like it was a fragile treasure. It was his passion, his pride. For a while, he believed the neighborhood would honor that effort. Then came Colleen. She wasn't just any resident, she was the HOA president, known to all. Sharp-witted, confident. Always with a clipboard in hand, she made it clear at meetings that she'd lived there longest and knew the rules best. If a trash can lingered too long at the curb, she'd send a note. If a mailbox tilted slightly, she'd demand a repaint. Bryson initially brushed it off as quirkiness, some people love rules, fine. But he didn't expect her SUV to start carving through his lawn. It wasn't a one-time thing, it became routine. Every morning, her silver crossover swung wide, its tires grinding the edge of his grass to cut a corner on her cul-de-sac loop. The first time, he thought it might be a mistake. But when he saw deep tire marks etched into the soft soil, mud splattered across his freshly cleaned driveway, a knot formed in his gut. He chose to handle it diplomatically. That evening, he crossed the street as she unloaded groceries from her SUV. "Hey, Colleen," he said with a friendly nod, "I think you drove over my yard this morning, left some tracks." Colleen straightened, holding a jug of milk, and gave him a look that could slice through stone. "Oh, that," she said. "I do that sometimes. It's faster. It's no big deal." Bryson blinked, caught off guard by her nonchalance. "I'm trying to get the sod to take root, it's delicate right now." She tilted her head, smirking. "You're new. You don't get how things work here. I've been in this neighborhood since it was just dirt. We all cut through when we need to." With that, she turned back to her groceries, dismissing him like the conversation was over. Bryson stood there, stunned, processing her words. It wasn't just the tracks, it was how she brushed him off, like his work, his home, meant nothing. Back inside, his wife asked, "What did she say?" He sighed. "She basically said it's her neighborhood, not mine." That was the first fracture in their relationship. From then on, Bryson watched. Every morning, without fail, her SUV rolled over his lawn, chewing up the grass he'd watered the night before. Each time felt less like a mistake and more like a power play. Neighbors noticed too, glancing out windows as she passed, shaking their heads but staying silent. No one wanted to challenge Colleen, she had a knack for making life tough for those who did. For Bryson, the irritation grew into something deeper. Every rut, every muddy streak, every hour spent receding became personal. But this was just the start. Colleen's next move would push Bryson from annoyance to outright fury. When Bryson signed the papers for the house, he thought he'd found the perfect place. The subdivision was fresh, the homes modern, the streets still smelling of new asphalt. His kids, Parker and Sienna, loved sprinting through empty lots, wielding sticks like swords and turning dirt piles into forts. His wife, Leah, was already planning Christmas lights and browsing patio furniture online. For Bryson, the house was more than a building. Growing up in apartments in Columbus, Ohio, where his mom worked long nursing shifts, he'd never had a yard or pushed a mower over his own land. When the moving truck left and he stood barefoot on his new grass, he told Leah softly, "This is it. This is what I've always wanted." She kissed his cheek and whispered, "It's ours now." That summer, Bryson poured himself into the yard. Trips to Lowe's became a ritual, with bags of fertilizer stacking up in the garage. He spent hours sweating through his shirts, hose in hand, watching the sod knit into the soil. Every green blade felt like a triumph. Neighbors passing by would wave or chat briefly. That's how he met Colleen. She approached one Saturday, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her head. "You must be the Hales," she said. "Welcome to Westbrook Estates. I'm Colleen Stratton, HOA president." Her handshake was firm, her smile stiff. She eyed Leah's flower bed by the driveway. "Nice start. Just keep it within the approved colors, no bright oranges or purples. We like things consistent here." Bryson nodded, a bit thrown but polite. "Got it, thanks for the tip." Colleen scanned the yard like a health inspector. "We're a community that values appearances. Everyone pitches in, and it works well. If something's off, I'll let you know." She walked off with a wave, leaving Bryson and Leah exchanging glances. Leah raised her eyebrows. "Well, that was warm." Bryson chuckled, shrugging it off. He figured Colleen was just the neighborhood busybody, overzealous but harmless. For a few weeks, life was good. Parker made a friend down the street, Sienna ditched her training wheels, and Leah joined a book club. Bryson felt a surge of pride every time he pulled into the driveway, the tidy lawn welcoming him like a promise kept. But then came the first tracks. It was a Monday morning. Bryson was sipping coffee when he saw Colleen's SUV roll over the edge of his lawn. No hesitation, no swerve, just straight across like it was a shortcut. He stepped outside, mug in hand, and saw deep grooves in the dew-soaked grass, mud smeared on the concrete. He crouched, touching the torn roots. The frustration wasn't just about the lawn, it was the disrespect. That night at dinner, he told Leah, she drove right over the grass. Leah paused, fork in her salad. "Right in front of you." He nodded. "Didn't even look." Leah set her fork down. "You should say something." Maybe she didn't realize. Bryson shrugged. "Maybe I'll give her the benefit of the doubt." So he did. The next evening, he approached her politely, but her response floored him. "You don't get how things work here," she said, brushing him off. "We've all done it. You'll adjust." Later, Leah stared at him. "Adjust? Bryson, it's your lawn." He rubbed his temples. "I know. I just don't want to start a feud with the HOA president our first month here." Leah touched his hand. "Sometimes you've got to stand up, Bry." The next morning, Colleen's SUV crossed the lawn again, this time waving like it was a game. Bryson watched, jaw tight. It wasn't just carelessness, it was a challenge. Neighbors saw it too. The Wilkins, the retired couple next door, winced as Colleen drove over the grass while they walked their dog. Later, Bryson asked Mr. Wilkins, "Does she always do this?" He sighed, lowering his clippers. "Colleen's been here forever. People don't argue with her. She makes life hard if you do." Bryson nodded, the weight sinking in. But Colleen wasn't done. Her next step would turn Bryson's irritation into a burning resentment he couldn't ignore. By early October, Bryson had had enough. The ruts in his lawn weren't just marks, they were gashes, wide and muddy, scarring something he'd nurtured through the summer heat. He'd watered it nightly, pulled weeds by hand, and now Colleen's SUV seemed to dig deeper each day, not just into the soil but into his patience. That Friday, Leah noticed him pacing by the window, coffee in hand. "You're talking to her again?" she asked. "Yeah," Bryson said, jaw set. "I'll stay calm, but this has to stop." At 7 a.m., Colleen's SUV backed out of her driveway. Instead of turning toward the cul-de-sac, she cut across Bryson's grass as usual. This time, he was outside. "Colleen," he called, stepping forward, hand raised. Her window rolled down, sunglasses glinting. "Morning, Bryson," she said, almost taunting. "We need to talk," he said, voice steady. "You can't keep driving over my yard." I've asked before, it's ruining the grass. And it's disrespectful. Colleen tilted her head, lips curling. Disrespectful. Don't be so dramatic. It's just grass. You'll live. Bryson's voice hardened. It's not just grass. It's my property. I've put time and money into it, and you're destroying it. Colleen's laugh was sharp. You're new here. You don't know how this place works. I've been here since it was built. I know what's allowed. Bryson's tone tightened. Allowed. The HOA doesn't say you can drive through my yard. Her smile wavered briefly, then she said, you really want to fight me? Trust me, you don't. I can make things tough for you. The threat hung in the air. Neighbors' walking dogs slowed, ears perked. Bryson glanced around, aware of the audience, but stood firm. All I want is for you to stop driving over my yard. If you make this bigger, that's your choice. Colleen didn't respond. She rolled up her window, gunned the engine, and deliberately cut across the same path before driving off. Bryson stood frozen, fists clenched, as she vanished. The Wilkins couple exchanged nervous looks but stayed silent. That evening, Leah found Bryson kneeling in the yard, reseeding the ruts. She did it anyway, didn't she? Leah asked softly. Bryson didn't look up. She wanted to make a point in front of everyone. Leah crouched beside him, brushing dirt from his sleeve. You can't let her bully you, Bry. If you give in, she'll think she can push you around forever. Bryson sighed. I don't want to be the guy fighting the HOA president our first year here, but she's forcing it. Inside, even the kids noticed the tension. Sienna asked one night, why does that lady keep driving on our grass? Don't people use roads? Bryson forced a smile. Some people don't care about rules, sweetie. But we'll sort it out. He wasn't sure how. The next Monday, he tried a new approach. He wrote a polite note, taped it to Colleen's door. Colleen, please respect my property and stop driving through my yard. This is my home, and I've worked hard on it. Let's avoid further conflict. Bryson. The next morning, the note was gone, but Colleen's SUV plowed through the same path, spraying mud onto his mailbox. Bryson's frustration turned to anger. Every sight of her car knotted his stomach. He stopped waving when they passed, stopped trying to be civil. Leah saw it too. One evening on the porch, she said, this isn't just about grass anymore, is it? Bryson shook his head. No. It's about her thinking she owns this place and me proving she doesn't own me. A storm was brewing, and both felt it. But Colleen wasn't slowing down. Her next move would push Bryson beyond patience, and the neighborhood would soon see the clash escalate. By late October, Bryson's yard looked like a war zone. Each time he patched the ground, new tire tracks tore it apart. Weekends meant for family time became repair sessions, seed, soil, water, repeat. He could almost hear Colleen smirk as her SUV carved into the grass. Neighbors whispered too. At a cookout, Bryson overheard, that's his lawn, the new guy's. Colleen drives through it daily. He's asked her to stop, but you know Colleen. A pause, then, I'm surprised he hasn't snapped. Bryson gripped his plate, pretending not to hear, but the words burned. Leah noticed his tension, the way he stared out the window, shoulders stiffening at the sound of Colleen's engine. One night, clearing the dinner table, she said, Bry, this is eating you up. You've got to act. I've tried, he muttered. I've asked, I've written notes. What else can I do? Call the cops over grass. Leah gave him a look. Maybe the HOA. If she's president, there's got to be others. He laughed bitterly. Colleen is the HOA. Everyone else just follows her lead. The breaking point came the next morning. Bryson stepped outside with his coffee and froze. His new mailbox, installed the previous weekend, was caked in mud, not just tire spray, but a deliberate smear, like she'd sped up on purpose. That evening, he marched to Colleen's door, pounding hard. She opened it, smiling coldly. Well, hello, Bryson. What's the emergency? You know exactly what, he snapped. My mailbox, my yard, you keep doing this, and I'm done playing nice. Colleen leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Oh, please. It's a little mud. You're acting like I crashed into your house. Bryson's voice rose. You're destroying my property. A porch light flicked on across the street. Neighbors were listening. I don't care how long you've lived here. You don't get to ruin my lawn because it's convenient. Colleen's eyes narrowed. Do you know who you're talking to? I've been president here for 15 years. If you make trouble, you'll regret it. The air was thick, the street holding its breath. Then Colleen shut the door with a sharp click. Bryson stood there, fists shaking, before walking back. Leah met him at the door. What happened? She threatened me, he said, rubbing his forehead. Said I'd regret it. Leah's face hardened. This isn't just the lawn anymore. She's trying to intimidate you. The next few days, Bryson barely slept, replaying her words. At work, he stared blankly at his screen. At home, he couldn't focus on movie night with the kids, jumping at the sound of Colleen's SUV. Then Parker asked, Dad, why does Miss Stratton hate us? Bryson's chest tightened. She doesn't hate us, buddy. She just doesn't respect boundaries. Why not? Parker asked, voice small. Bryson had no answer. That question hit harder than the ruts in the grass. It wasn't just his pride now, it was what his kids were learning. Were they supposed to accept being trampled, or stand up, no matter the cost? The decision grew in his mind, quiet at first, then louder. By the first cold snap in Charlotte, Bryson knew he wouldn't let Colleen win. But his response would shock the block. He wasn't just going to talk anymore. He was going to act. The confrontation wasn't private this time. It happened Wednesday morning, in full view of the neighborhood. Bryson was done hiding his anger. When Colleen's SUV rolled over his lawn again, he was ready. He stood at the edge of his driveway, coffee in hand, eyes fixed on her car as her tires hit the curb. He stepped forward, raising his hand, forcing her to brake. The screech turned heads. Mr. Wilkins, raking leaves, straightened up. Kids at the bus stop went quiet. Bryson approached her window. Roll it down, Colleen. She hesitated, then lowered it halfway. What now? She asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. Bryson leaned in, voice low but firm. This stops today. You've ignored every request, every note. You've laughed at me. I'm telling you one last time, don't drive over my yard again. Colleen smirked. Or what? Bryson's jaw tightened. Or there'll be consequences. Real ones. Colleen laughed loudly, for all to hear. Consequences. You think you scare me, Bryson? I've dealt with bigger problems than you. You're new here, you don't know who you're messing with. Bryson stepped closer, voice dropping. No, Colleen, you don't know who you're messing with. The SUV idled, exhaust puffing. The standoff stretched, the Wilkins dog tugging at its leash, kids whispering at the bus stop. Finally, Colleen reversed, backing off the lawn and onto the street. Fine, she said. Window down. If this is the hill you want to die on, go ahead. But I warned you. She sped off, leaving fresh ruts. Bryson stood there, breathing hard, before turning back to the house. Leah was at the door, arms crossed, eyes wide. You just went head-to-head with her in front of everyone, she said. I had to, Bryson muttered. She doesn't get it any other way. Leah shook her head. You've declared war. That night, the fallout began. An HOA email arrived, subject, property compliance reminder. It listed minor violations, Bryson's trash bins out too long, a patch of grass slightly overgrown, a basketball hoop too close to the curb. The timing screamed Colleen. Bryson forwarded it to Leah with one line, she's coming for me. Leah replied instantly, then we fight back. The next day, Bryson kept his cool, but as he left for an errand, he saw Colleen with two board members near the subdivision entrance, pointing at his house, clipboard in hand. His blood boiled. He almost confronted her but stopped. Another shouting match wasn't the answer, not yet. That evening, Leah asked quietly, what's the plan? Bryson stirred spaghetti sauce, then said, I've tried reason, politeness. She only understands force. Leah frowned. Force. Not violence, Bryson clarified. Consequences. Something to show her she can't keep trampling people. Leah studied him. Whatever you're planning, Bry, make sure it doesn't backfire. He nodded, but his mind was set. The next morning, Colleen's SUV cut through again. Bryson didn't move from the window. He didn't shout. He let her think she'd won. But he knew the battle had shifted. She thought intimidation and HOA notices would break him. She was wrong. He had a plan she wouldn't see coming. But before he acted, Colleen would push him one step further, and that final slight would lock in his resolve. The final straw hit on a rainy Saturday morning. Bryson was on the porch, coffee in hand, as drizzle soaked the ground. The lawn was soft, muddy, too wet to mow. He hoped Colleen might skip her shortcut today. At 9:15, her SUV appeared. Bryson didn't stand. He knew what was coming. Her tires climbed the curb, sinking deep into the mud, ripping up sod like tissue paper, splattering mud across his driveway and truck. He shot to his feet, storming down the steps, yelling over her engine, "Are you serious right now?" Colleen slowed, rolling her window down, smirking. "Relax, Bryson, it's just grass." "Look at this mess," he shouted, pointing to the ruined lawn. Colleen leaned out. "Maybe if you'd picked sturdier sod, it wouldn't tear so easily." She waved, rolled up her window, and drove off, leaving deep trenches. Bryson stood in the rain, fists shaking. Leah came to the porch with a towel. "Bryson, come inside," she said softly. He didn't move, mind racing. That afternoon, patching the yard felt futile, like bailing out a sinking boat. He threw down the rake, mud splattering his jeans. Leah approached, worry in her eyes. "You can't keep doing this, Bry." "She's not stopping." He looked at her, voice low. "Then I have to stop her." Leah's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "She thinks she can do whatever she wants, no matter how many times I ask. The only way this ends is if I make it impossible for her to keep going." Leah hesitated. "Bryson, what's the plan?" He stared at the ruts, the mud on his truck, the torn grass. "I'll handle it. Trust me." That night, after the kids were asleep, Bryson sat in the garage, staring at his toolbox. His hands were steady, his decision made. He pulled out steel spikes from a past project, long and sharp. With gloves, a bucket, and a shovel, he walked to the lawn in the dark. The neighborhood was quiet, porch lights off, curtains drawn. He crouched where Colleen's tires always crossed, digging shallow trenches, setting the spikes just high enough to catch a tire, hidden under the grass. His heart pounded, but not with fear, a cold, clear focus. This wasn't revenge, it was justice, making her face the damage she caused. He smoothed the soil, wiped his hands, and whispered, "Let's see you laugh now." Leah was waiting in the living room, eyeing his dirty gloves. "You did something, didn't you?" He met her gaze. "She'll get it tomorrow." Leah pressed her lips together, torn between concern and agreement. She knew Colleen had left him no choice. That night, Bryson lay awake, every sound outside spiking his pulse. But when morning came, he felt something new, anticipation. At 7:40, Colleen's SUV engine hummed. Bryson peeked through the curtains. Her car rolled forward, angling toward his lawn. The moment her tires hit the grass, a deafening bang rang out, followed by a hiss of air. The SUV lurched, tilted, and stopped dead in his yard. Bryson stood at the window, chest tight. Leah gasped, "Oh my God." Blinds snapped open, garage doors creaked, neighbors spilled out in robes and slippers, staring. Colleen gripped her wheel, eyes wide with shock, her SUV crippled. But this wasn't the end, it was the spark. What followed would rattle the entire neighborhood and force everyone to pick a side. The tires' explosion echoed like a siren. Within minutes, porches filled, neighbors clustering like moths to a flame. Some held coffee, others zipped jackets over pajamas, all eyes on the stranded SUV. Colleen sat frozen, hands tight on the wheel, her usual smugness replaced by pale shock. She stepped out slowly in slippers, the hiss of air filling the silence. "What the hell," she muttered, circling her shredded tire, rubber peeling like bark. Bryson stood on his porch, arms crossed, silent. Leah touched his shoulder, grounding him. Colleen spun, locking eyes with him. "Did you do this?" she shouted, voice breaking. Bryson let the question hang, then said evenly, "You did this to yourself." Neighbors murmured, some gasping, others hiding grins. Mr. Wilkins tugged his wife's sleeve. "Let's go inside," he whispered. She shook her head. "No way. I've waited years for this." Colleen stormed toward Bryson's porch, mud on her sweatpants. "You planted something, spikes, nails, I don't know what, but I know it was you. You sabotaged my car." Bryson stayed calm, heart racing. "I asked you to stop, Colleen, over and over. You didn't listen. Actions have consequences." She jabbed a finger at him. "This is criminal. I could have been hurt. I'm calling the police." Leah stepped forward, voice sharp. "Hurt? You've torn up our lawn for months. Our kids play in mud because of you, and now you're the victim." The crowd stirred, heads swiveling. Colleen's eyes darted, realizing neighbors weren't sympathetic but amused. She faltered, then. "System, here's the rewritten paragraph with different wording but maintaining the same length and meaning. Imagine pouring months of effort into perfecting your dream home, only to watch the HOA president destroy it daily with her SUV. One man stayed patient, attempting to keep things civil, until he retaliated in a way no one anticipated. The sound rang out like a gunshot, a sharp crack pierced the quiet morning, followed by the screech of metal and the rush of air escaping a tire. Neighbors looked up from their breakfasts, curtains parted, and garage doors lifted. There, on a freshly laid lawn, a silver SUV sat tilted, its front tire torn apart in the grass. Behind the wheel, Colleen Stratton, the HOA president, gripped the steering wheel tightly, her gaze shifting from her vehicle to the watching neighbors, then to the men on his porch across the street. That man was Bryson Hale, the neighbor she'd been driving over for months. He didn't shout or rush out, he stood calmly, arms crossed, observing. That's when the neighborhood realized the tension between these two had finally erupted. But this wasn't just about a ruined tire, it was about respect, control, and what happens when two stubborn people refuse to back down. To understand how it escalated, we need to go back a bit. When Bryson and his family moved into the Charlotte suburb, it seemed like a fresh start. At 44, an IT consultant with a flexible work-from-home job, Bryson was proud to own a house with a yard big enough for his two kids to enjoy. He spent summer weekends under the hot Carolina sun, laying sod, shaping flower beds, and nurturing every blade of grass like it was precious. It was his passion, his pride. For a time, he thought the neighborhood would value that effort. Then came Colleen. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was the HOA president, a name everyone knew. Sharp-tongued, self-assured, always carrying a clipboard, she made it clear at meetings that she'd been there longest and knew the rules inside out. If a trash can lingered too long at the curb, she'd send an email. If a mailbox tilted slightly, she'd insist on repainting it. Bryson initially dismissed it as her being particular, some people obsess over rules, fine. But he didn't expect her SUV to start carving through his lawn. It wasn't a one-off, it became a daily ritual. Every morning, her silver crossover veered wide, its tires grinding his grass to save a few seconds on her cul-de-sac loop. The first time, he assumed it was a mistake. But when he saw deep tire marks pressed into the soft soil, mud smeared across his freshly cleaned driveway, a heavy feeling settled in his chest. He decided to address it calmly. That evening, he approached her as she unloaded groceries from her SUV. "Hey, Colleen," he said politely, "I think you drove over my lawn this morning, left some marks." Colleen straightened, holding a milk jug, and shot him a look that could cut glass. "Oh, that," she said. "I do that sometimes. It's quicker. No harm done." Bryson, caught off guard by her casual dismissal, replied, "I'm working hard to get the sod to take, it's pretty delicate." She smirked, tilting her head. "You're new here. You don't know how things work. I've lived here since this place was just dirt. We all cut through when needed." With that, she turned back to her groceries, ending the conversation as if it was settled. Bryson stood there, stunned, processing her attitude. It wasn't just the tire tracks, it was how she brushed him off, like his home, his effort, meant nothing. Back inside, his wife asked, "What did she say?" He sighed. "Basically, it's her neighborhood, not ours." That was the first crack in their relationship. From then on, Bryson watched. Every morning, like clockwork, her SUV crossed his lawn, tearing up the grass he'd watered the previous night. Each pass felt less like an accident and more like a power move. Neighbors noticed, glancing out windows as she drove by, shaking their heads but staying quiet. No one wanted to cross Colleen. She had a reputation for making life difficult for anyone who challenged her. For Bryson, the frustration grew into something heavier. Every rut, every muddy streak, every moment spent receding felt personal. But this was only the beginning. Colleen's next action would push